Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a major machine learning breakthrough that's aiming to solve a literal life or death clinical dilemma in metastatic non-small cell lung cancer. We're looking at a new tool called A-STEP, and it is absolutely fascinating because it tackles a problem oncologists wrestle with every single day, deciding just how aggressive a patient's treatment really needs to be.
Here is how we're going to break this down today. First, we'll look at the human problem, the treatment dilemma itself. Then we'll demystify how the A-STEP model actually works, look at its real-world results, talk honestly about its blind spots, and wrap up with the future of this tech.
All right, part one, the lung cancer treatment dilemma.
Let's anchor ourselves in the highly practical, urgent problem that oncologists face right at the bedside. You see, doctors aren't just asking who benefits from immunotherapy anymore. We know it works. What they're asking is this exact, critical, head-scratching question: who needs the aggressive addition of chemotherapy on top of their immunotherapy? It's a really delicate balancing act of maximizing tumor fighting power while trying to minimize severe side effects. So it's a direct head-to-head treatment choice. On one side, you have immunotherapy alone. On the other, the chemo combo. And man, the stakes here are incredibly high for the patient. Guess wrong with the monotherapy, and the cancer can progress rapidly. But if you guess wrong with the combo, you're exposing a patient to toxic chemotherapy they never actually needed in the first place. And this is where we see a massive paradigm shift. Historically, we've basically been looking through a keyhole, relying on single biomarkers like PD-L1 just to predict a basic response. The new A-STEP method kicks the entire door wide open. It uses a multivariable clinicogenomic approach to actually estimate the individualized value of adding chemotherapy. That makes it a causal treatment selection tool, a real game changer. Which brings us to part two, building the A-STEP model.
So, how exactly does this new solution make these personalized recommendations? Well, it eats a massive amount of real-world data. The researchers didn't just look at one hospital. They gathered data from 2,300 patients across 4 different multi-institutional cohorts. From that giant pool, they harmonized 28 distinct, shared genomic features to feed into the system.
But, as you know, genes don't tell the whole story, right? So the model then sequences that complex genomic data right alongside 6 crucial clinical variables. This builds a much more comprehensive, holistic patient profile for the algorithm to actually chew on. And here's what makes this AI unique. It doesn't rely on just one single algorithm. A-STEP is an ensemble. It essentially acts like a board of experts, using an attention-based system to weigh 5 different modeling strategies to find the absolute best fit. This approach makes the model way more stable than if it just used a single method. Of course, we don't want AI to just be a mysterious black box in medicine, so researchers used SHAP values, which basically let us map exactly which data points the AI used to make its decision. They found that a specific mix of features drove the recommendations. Notice how it includes genetic mutations like APC and FBXW7 right alongside everyday clinical realities like a patient's smoking exposure. Okay, let's move to part 3, the results and better outcomes. To see if this actually works in the wild, researchers tested A-STEP on an independent historical cohort of 318 patients from Dana-Farber, and the results are pretty wild. The AI actually recommended changing the treatment that the human doctor had originally chosen for roughly half of those patients. And, interestingly, when it did disagree with the doctor, the AI more often pushed for the aggressive route, adding the chemotherapy. And the proof really is in the data here. When patients actually received the exact treatment A-STEP would have recommended, their progression-free survival improved significantly. We're looking at a hazard ratio of 0.60 for the solo therapy and 0.58 for the combo. To put that in perspective, that's roughly a 40% reduction in the risk of progression. Bottom line, when the real-world treatment matched the AI's math, patients had significantly better outcomes. So this quote from this study really hits the nail on the head. Navigating this incredibly complex clinical dilemma simply requires way more data variables than the human brain can juggle all at once. A single biomarker just isn't enough anymore when you're making a life-altering choice about chemotherapy. But let's get into part 4, crucial limitations and blind spots. Because look, to truly understand this technology, we have to be completely honest about what the model cannot do. First off, this was a retrospective study, so the AI is completely blind to unmeasured factors that a human doctor would spot immediately in the exam room, like if a patient is just terribly frail. Second, the success is based on a 3-month progression metric. That's a short-term surrogate endpoint, not definitive proof of long-term survival. Plus, to make all the data play nice together across different hospitals, they had to exclude some incredibly rich data points, like radiomic imaging. And this reveals a glaring gap between the algorithm and actual human care. Toxicity is totally absent from the AI's decision rule. Critically, A-STEP only calculates pure mathematical efficacy. It completely ignores the severe adverse effects, the nausea, the fatigue, and the immense hit to a patient's quality of life that comes with adding chemo. We also have to be a little careful with the math here. While the results looked highly promising under initial statistical thresholds, the researchers noted that the interaction results actually lost their significance when subjected to a strict Bonferroni correction. That's an incredibly rigorous statistical test used to prevent false positives. So this is a brilliant proof of concept, for sure, but it is not definitive law just yet. Also, remember those 2,300 patients we talked about? They came entirely from major North American cancer centers, so we have a massive blind spot regarding generalizability. We simply do not know how A-STEP performs in broader community practices or in underrepresented populations across the globe. Which brings us to our final section, Part 5, the future of A-STEP. Knowing these limits maps out exactly what has to happen before this tech reaches routine clinical care. We absolutely need prospective, randomized trials where the model is actively assigning treatment in real time. These future iterations have to factor in overall survival and, crucially, toxicity. The ultimate goal here is to build a clinician-facing tool that doesn't just dictate an answer, but actually shows doctors the predicted benefits, the uncertainties, and the real-world trade-offs. Which leaves us with a pretty profound thought to close out today's explainer. As AI models like A-STEP become increasingly accurate at predicting pure mathematical efficacy, how will doctors in the future balance the cold logic of an algorithm with the deeply human reality of treatment toxicity and a patient's personal goals? It is a fascinating frontier. Thanks so much for joining me to break this down, and I'll see you next time.